Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Adams, and I'm so grateful to be presenting today at the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference. Humanity Rising, Inspiring Care to Action. And today I'm going to be presenting on a topic that's been part of my life for the last decade or so, and that topic is permaculture. And this presentation will be part of a series that I've been working on called Inner Permaculture. And this project is an appeal to the permaculture world, that the inner work must precede the outer work in order for permaculture to truly work. And that's what we'll be getting into today. But first, I want to start off with this question. Do you believe anyone deserves to have more rights than you? Right. So this question I've been asking people over the last few years, and every time I do, the response is always no, right? And it's usually automatic. It's not something that people need to think about very long, right? And it's usually pretty quick. Like, no, I do not believe anyone deserves to have more rights than me, right? And so, as part of this presentation, I ask the viewer, what is your answer? And to think about it and keep it in mind as we move along. Let's get into permaculture, right? What is permaculture? I'm sure there's many people out there who have never even heard of permaculture. There's people who do know what it is, and then there's people who have heard of it and they think they know what it is, but they're not quite sure, what it is. And so that's pretty common across the board. And as you can see here by this quote that Bill Mollison, co-founder of permaculture, even he says because permaculture is so multidimensional that even he can't define it. It's much bigger than just a one sentence definition. And you would find that even the best teachers of permaculture today, if asked what is permaculture, would struggle to have anyone walking away with a solid definition. So that being said, I'm going to do my best to give a brief overview and give people a sense of what permaculture is, and kind of its philosophy. And so permaculture is a term and a design science that came about in the mid 1970s, and was created by these two Australian gentlemen, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. And it came about as a response to the ever increasing harmful effects of human activity, right? And they were pointing to agriculture as a key driver to these damaging consequences, such as flooding and land erosion, deforestation, and then also uh, poisonous foods and cancer and pollution. And then on top of that, they also were pointing to thoughtless design just based solely on fossil fuel energy and economical decisions and political decisions just based in greed, right? And so from that, permaculture was born, right, by recognizing the futility in trying to oppose those oppressive systems. And Bill Mollison and David Holmgren were asking, how can we create a new model, right? How can we create a better world by going around them? And then hence this rather famous quote by Buckminster Fuller, right? You never can change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that will make the existing model obsolete. And so that was the idea, to create that new model. And ever since then, permaculture over the last 50 years has been taught all across the world, in kind of this grassroots kind of cultural way. And permaculture really offers an extensive wealth of knowledge. It's an amazing source of information on, that doing that outside work and, how do we um, create abundance and design for our needs in anywhere in the world, in any climate. And I don't have time to get into any of that, but the knowledge that is available is incredible. And so, really, it's about how do we grow food for ourselves is a big aspect of that in harmony with nature as opposed to against it. And 50 years later, a big question is, is humanity ready for this? So permaculture is a synthesis of a permanent agriculture and then also a permanent culture, right? The permanent agriculture again is looking at ways of like that balance of looking to nature as our teacher, looking to the forest as our teacher, right? How do we cultivate the land in enduring way where we're not destroying it? And if we're able to achieve that, you know, that balance of providing for ourselves outside of ourselves, then it would also lead to um, a stable social order in society, a permanent culture. All right, that's the idea. And then for sure, there's definitely this theme of anti-authoritarianism that is running throughout permaculture, right? It wasn't only agriculture that they were pointing to; they also were pointing to government as the problem. And so this quote by Bill Mollison is very well known and popular throughout the permaculture community. And let's just have a look at it. The tragic reality is that very few sustainable systems are designed or applied by those who hold power. And the reason for this is obvious and simple. To let people arrange their own food, energy, and shelter is to lose economic and political control over them. We should cease to look to power structures, hierarchical systems, or governments to help us and devise ways to help ourselves. Right? So you can see there, clearly they're pointing to government as part of the problem and getting in our way. And so permaculture is saying, like, how can we create a way where we can help ourselves and not be dependent on them? All right. So the intention of this presentation, and as always, future work is the theme is to address the root cause that permaculture leaves out. Because permaculture points mainly to agriculture as the most destructive force on the planet. And there's this belief, amongst the permaculture world that if we can change agriculture and redesign agriculture, then that, it's like will solve all the problems. But in reality, agriculture is not the root cause of all the problems, right? Agriculture is an effect of human consciousness, right? The collective consciousness of humanity is really the most destructive force on this planet. Uh, the minds, the collective mind of humanity being imbalanced within is creating that imbalance that we see outside of us. And so human consciousness really is the root cause. And agriculture is the effect of us being, separate from nature. And then number two is when people really get that, right? You really realize that that root cause is the problem, and that must be solved first before we can truly heal the effects. All right, and that goes to this analogy, right? Like saying attempting to fix the external world without first addressing the internal world is like trying to heal a diseased tree by trimming its branches while ignoring its poison roots, right? We really got to understand the root cause. And so again, the inner work must precede the outer work in order for permaculture to work, right? It's that imbalance that's within that is creating the imbalance without. That's what we need to understand, because the root cause is within, and as within, so without. And that's a big theme throughout this work I'm putting out there as far as inner permaculture, right? What we are experiencing outside of ourselves is a reflection of what's going on inside of ourselves. And so, what's going on inside of us, right? Humankind as a family is suffering from an imbalance within our minds, that separation from nature. The collective consciousness of humanity is struggling with a cognitive dissonance, where we are in contradiction with our own morals and values. Again, do you believe anyone deserves to have more rights than you? Do you vote? Keep these questions in mind. Let's get back to Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. I want to play a couple of clips by them. I'm going to start off with Bill Mollison getting to that root cause and asking a very important question.
Permaculture has always been much more than a gardening system. It arose from questioning of the 60s and the previous questioning of the 1890s and the 1930s about why does society, with all its skills and intelligence and resources, keeps falling into holes of its own making.
All right, why? Right, that's the big question. What is the root cause? Why does society keep falling into the holes of its own making? Right? Why does society, um, and society's getting to all of humanity. Like permaculture was created for all of humanity, right? It's much bigger than just a gardening system for yourself, like to go out and live off grid and all that. It's about the collective consciousness of humanity. And so society, right, it must have something to do with the collective beliefs, right? Um, why does humanity keep falling into these holes of our own making? Um, let's have a look at this quote too by Bill Mollison, where he's getting deeper into the inception of permaculture and the strategy. He's saying, I withdrew from society about 1970 because I had been long in opposition to the systems that I saw were killing us. I decided it was no good persisting with opposition. That got you nowhere. I thought for 2 years. I wanted to return to society, but I wanted to come back with only something very positive. I did not want to oppose anything again and waste my time. Somewhere someone had given me Mao Zedong's little red book. I didn't understand it very well. In fact, it was very difficult for me to read. But at one point, when he was talking about an attack on the city of Taiching, his advice to his army was don't attack Taiching. It's too heavily defended. Go around it, and Taiching will fall. So I've been going around the things that I think are killing us. All right. And so that's been the strategy of permaculture to go around. He's saying the government, he's pointing to the government, right? He's saying the government is too heavily defended and there's no point in fighting them head on. And if we go around, then we can slowly gain power for ourselves in that way. And so next I'm going to play a much longer clip by David Holmgren, who's really elaborating on that strategy. And it's about 5 minutes long, and I want to play it so it gives people more of a sense of what permaculture is. And I figure who better to hear it from than the two guys who originated it.
The other way to think about permaculture is as a way to change the world, because of course a lot of people are motivated around permaculture as a positive, we can change the world in a positive way, rather than just endlessly trying to stop the world we don't want. Permaculture has always been about how do we create the world we do want. Well, when you start to think about those issues, most people think about how we change public policies, how you get the leverages of power pulled in a different way, so all the big structures in society get changed. That's an old way of changing the world. The sort of new way that's now sort of well proven, but still a lot of the politicos, the people who think about how do we change the world, haven't caught on that actually by changing yourself and what you do yourself, that is actually not just a little stepping stone to contributing to a larger change, it's actually arguably the most powerful thing you can do. And some of the reasons why are, firstly, if you've got a strategy or anything in permaculture, from own a building to community supported agriculture, right back to just growing your own food in your backyard, when you do something for yourself that you benefit from, that reflects the ethics and design principles of permaculture, you're doing something for yourself and you're also reducing your adverse impact on the world. But by doing something that you benefit from, that is potentially attractive to other people to say, oh, I'll do that too. Whereas the hard-bitten person who's doing something just to atone for our sins in the world is not very attractive to many other people. You know, a small proportion are motivated by such things, but most people want to get something out of it, and especially get something directly. So the permaculture strategies benefit the early adopters, and on top of that, they're simple, low-key things that other people can copy. And they often don't need permission of the authorities, of the banks to provide funding to do it. And that's really important, because a lot of these changes, if they were done at even by a proportion of the population, represent a real threat to a lot of the power structures in society. A lot of those centralised systems, the corporations, the governments with their tax base. So they would understand that a lot of this self-reliant stuff associated with permaculture is actually subversive. And so if it really took off in a large way, it might be not just not assisted, but attempts to prevent it. If that's like some advanced technology or very large-scale project, it's very easy for power elites to say, no, can't do that. And we can see the struggles over renewable energy versus fossil fuels. But if it's something that you can do at home, it's very, very hard to stop it. So on top of that, that copying allows a rapid evolution where you improve the thing, because you do one example and then you copy it and do another, and you get this incremental improvement. If we did big projects that are all driven by sustainability concepts but represent massive reallocation of society's resources, it always will end up as a mess. Because somehow the complexity of those things, you might have the ideas, but when you actually go to do it, it's never quite right. So the small scale replication, rather than big giant projects, is a good learning process. And it also allows people to adapt the solutions to different situations. And that's very, very important, because every situation is slightly different. And then when you get more people doing it, that gives you, if you like, the lobbying power of, well, there's all of us over here doing this. We've got a bit of a power base through autonomy, not a power base through shouting louder to get the authorities to change policies, because that's really a powerless way to go about things. And we can see in the last 30 years how mass movements to get structures to change direction, whether it's due to engaging in foreign wars or whether it's to do with climate change, have actually been harder and harder to get those changes and requiring more and more mass movement resources. Whereas when we just do something that supports ourselves and provides an example to others, it's actually also the leverage towards a larger positive change.
All right, so there you have it. I think it's quite clear to understand, that strategy of permaculture is to go around, right? Go around man's law. And instead of asking for permission from our masters, right? Um, and understanding also that they're too heavily defended, that we can sidestep, permission and use incremental small scale replication of that outside work, and that'll gradually increase, um, give us that foothold that we need, to increase freedom over these oppressive systems, right? Give us that leverage that we need to accumulate more power from them. But that takes us back to this analogy, right? That there really is no amount of outside work that we can do, like by going around the government, can never really be enough because it's not getting rid, it's not addressing that root cause. Again, attempting to fix the external world without first addressing the internal world is like trying to heal a diseased tree by trimming its branches while ignoring its poison roots, right? We cannot be in ignorance of the root cause, or we will just keep continuing to keep falling into those holes of our own making, right? We cannot sidestep the root cause. There's no way around the root cause, right? The imbalance within is causing that imbalance without, right? The oppressive systems are never going to go away. The government is never going to go away, as long as humanity keeps believing in the legitimacy of their authority, right? And so many people wholeheartedly believe in their masters, and they vote for them, and they believe they deserve to have that power over us. And so again, it's that inner work that is so much more important than the outer work. Working on that imbalance within is an understanding that that is what is creating these power structures to exist outside of us. And so that takes us to natural law, right? This is the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference. And natural law is something that I'm going to be definitely integrating into the work of inner permaculture, and just getting started, introducing it into this work. And it's quite the opposite, right? It's natural law strategy is to go within, right? There is no way around, right? And the key, the real solution to that imbalance is can only be healed internally, right? That we must face ourselves head on. We must be honest with ourselves about reality, right? And so it's the incremental small scale replication of the inside work, right? By increasing morality and balance within is the only way to increase freedom. And that takes us to the law of freedom, which is another thing I'll be integrating into this work. And the law of freedom states that freedom and morality are directly proportional, right? The more moral, the more balanced within society we are, the more freedom we will have. and vice versa, the less moral, the less balanced, the less free we will be. And that's where we are currently today. Human consciousness is very immoral, and the less moral in believing in these authoritarian systems, right? And so when it comes to morality, do you believe anyone deserves to have more rights than you? Do you vote for people who have more rights than you, right? Do you believe in slavery? All right. And so the truth is, government is slavery. In any shape or form, government is slavery, right? Throughout humanity, there is this belief system that some people have the right to claim ownership over you. And, I know many people will say, well, I don't see it that way. But in truth, it really is that way. Government is slavery. And this is something that I'll definitely be integrating into the future work of the inner permaculture, and must be known, must be part of that inner work. And also understanding these things such as statism, which is that religious belief, in your governments, and moral relativism, which is the belief that there's no such thing as right and wrong. And that really is a huge root cause of all the problems that we see. The governments are doing wrongdoings all day long, and yet people seem to be okay with it, and they know that if they do the same things, that they would get in trouble, that it would be wrong if they do it, but it's not wrong when the government does it. And that cognitive dissonance, where people are in contradiction, with their own values, and they don't even realize that they are, and they'll just keep saying, I don't see it that way, when the truth is that it is that way. All right. And so these are all things that will be part of the future work integrating into permaculture. But I want to get back to David Holmgren again, and I want it to be known that permaculture is not just about the outer work. There's so much that they included. They did understand, that there is a problem, with the consciousness, and there is a moral foundation. So let's just play this quick clip from the previous clip where he did mention, more about the most powerful thing that we can do.
Still, a lot of the politicos, the people who think about how do we change the world, haven't caught on that actually by changing yourself and what you do yourself, that is actually not just a little stepping stone to contributing to a larger change, it's actually arguably the most powerful thing you can do.
All right, so that's speaking to that natural law strategy, like that small scale, little stepping stones in changing yourself, right? Is the most powerful thing you can do, So um, we'll get to that. A couple of quotes, just pointing to that same message. Leo Tolstoy. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. There's so many people out there trying to, do work on the outside, but there's really so much healing within the belief systems of humanity that needs to be, healed first. And of course, the great Bob Marley, right? Getting to that as within, so without, right? The mental slavery is creating the slavery that we see with by believing in these governments outside of us. And it's only us. We're the only ones who can do it, right? The inner work must precede the outer work in order for permaculture to truly work. And the inner work is so much harder than the outer work, and that's clear. Like going, facing yourself, being honest with yourself, all these things is a billion times harder. So that's why everyone wants to just skip over this part and get to the outside work. But the good news is that permaculture did not leave the inner work out. And in the very first chapter of Bill Mollison's like seminal work, the designer's manual that the permaculture course is based off of. The first chapter gets into the philosophy of permaculture, and it gets into morality and consciousness within the first few paragraphs. And on page 2, he introduces the three ethics, right? And just to go over them real quick, you can see that they have a lot to do with care. And of course, this conference is about inspiring care to action. So care for the earth, right? Earth is a living, breathing entity. Without ongoing care and nurturing, the consequences will be too big to ignore, right? And what are we doing? We're just really just shitting on the earth. We're just not caring for it, and we're suffering that lack of care. And then number 2, care for people, right? That lack of care for people is this really getting to the golden rule, right? How can we treat people the way that we want to be treated? And that's something that I'll be getting into in the future as well. And then the third ethic has been the most controversial. It's gone through a few different phases. It's changed over time, but it people argue over it. It becomes political, so we see that statism going on within the minds of so many permaculture students, and that. But what it comes down to is balance, right? It really, I think it even to sum it up in one word, ecology. Looking to ecology, looking at that balance in the world as our teacher. And as I keep saying, we have that imbalance within that we need to heal. But by finding that balance within, we can also create balance without, and that's huge, right? So this is part of the inner work of permaculture. And then a little further on in permaculture's evolution, David Holmgren introduced the principles. And again, these principles are mostly looked at and applied to the outer work. That's where people are looking to apply them. But the good news is that, he didn't leave it there. He also was showing ways where we can apply them to the inside work. And that's something that I am for sure going to be going through them one by one and showing how we can apply them to the inner work too. And then there's the Hermetic principles, which I feel would be of great value to include within the teaching of permaculture. And you can see here that, this short amount of time, I've already, uh, gone over a few of them, like the first principle of mentalism, all is mind, right? Getting to, the consciousness of humanity being the root cause, and the mind being the most destructive force. All creation comes from mind. And then the principle of correspondence, right? As within, so without. We saw that. And the principle of rhythm. And that gets all into about that balance, that third ethic. And that's something I'm going to be creating, I know, a lot of content on when it comes to the third ethic and rhythm. And then, of course, cause and effect, right? That root cause and the problem of, the permaculture world really operating on the plane of effects, trying to fix things in the outside world without truly addressing the cause, and knowing that the real power to affect change is only on that plane of causality. All right. And then there's the permaculture flower, and you could see in the middle of the flower the ethics and principles, of how to apply them to not only the outside work, but the inner work. David Holmgren included these other, you know, subjects outside of the outer work, like the first three, and that's where permaculture seems to be stuck. That's where the main focus is on that outer work, those first three. But the good news is that that inner work of the education and the spiritual well-being and finances, like how do we see ourselves with money and land tenure gets to property rights and uh, community governments. How can we live with these principles and create a way to um, live under natural law, and not be governed under man's law. So these are things that can all be included into the world of permaculture, and definitely, as I keep saying, need to be focused on more, right? For sure. And so, in closing, permaculture is a guide. It's a user's manual for humanity to utilize in accordance with our Mother Earth. It contains the knowledge, guidance, and instructions needed to live within the balance and maintain a harmonious way of living in our outside world. Permaculture is waiting in the wings for humanity as a whole to recognize the imbalance, the lack of care, and disharmony within our minds. The healing must begin within, first across mankind. Then, and only then, will permaculture become the effect caused by a balanced, unified cooperation in consciousness. In our present time, situation, and culture, it is the imbalance and disharmony within the collective consciousness. It's the colonization and mining of our minds that is causing the problems we see around us. Large scale totalitarian agriculture throughout history has not been the most destructive force on the planet Earth. Totalitarian agriculture is the effect of a collectively spreading diseased mind. The root cause is the mind. The most destructive force is the mind. There are no outside solutions, be they political, financial, religious, or even permaculture. But permaculture is a guide, a user's manual for all of humanity. Only when humanity cares for truth will its guidance be useful.